Elgood's Brewery, Black Dog, mild.
And remember, life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. I've got one here today from the fantastic Elgood's Brewery from Wisbeach in Cambridgeshire, and this is their Black Dog Mild. And I've been wanting to try this for ages, simply for two reasons. First reason, this has won a lot of awards, 26 no less, and these are quite prestigious awards. They're the Great British Beer Festival Awards. That's a really good day out. If it was on this year, I'd have been going to it. It's not, unfortunately. Wasn't on last year, obviously. But if you've ever been, you know what I'm talking about. It's a fantastic day out. Whole host of brewers there. And you find some really decent beer there as well. I've been a few times. Absolutely love it. But it's also won the SIBA Awards, Society of Independent Brewers, or whatever it's called, something like that. I don't know what SIBA stands for, but it is a Society of Independent Brewers. And the Camera Awards that it's won. So these are not two bob muppets that are judging beer. These are people that know their stuff when it comes to beer. And when you see a list of awards like that, you think this has to have something to have gotten all them awards. But I also wanted to try it because I like what Elgood's do. Now, I've tried two of their beers. Their Cambridge Bitter, which was really nice, a very, very good session beer, or session bitter, I should say. And I've also tried the Warrior Bitter, which was like an ESB, which was absolutely fantastic. That got a 10 out of 10. So I'm liking so far what I've tried from Elgood's. And they're quite a traditional brewer. They go way back, well, they can trace their history back to the 1700s. But the real history of Elgood's, there was a brewery before they took it over, before it got into the Elgood family. That happened in 1877. But as I say, there was brewing happening before that. So they've acquired that brewery. And they're generally good at what they do. I've read reviews of some of their beers, the ones that I haven't tried. This gets fantastic reviews. I'm not going to let it cloud my judgment though. And one thing I will say about mild, it's very, very hit and miss. I've tried some mild from some pretty good brewers and not really been impressed. I've tried the Harvey's mild, the Harvey's Dark Mild. Didn't really like that. The Timothy Taylor stuff, the Ramtam, didn't like that. They've renamed that now. That's called Dark or Landlord Dark or Dark Landlord. I didn't think much of that. I thought it was a bit bland. But the description of this looks quite interesting. And that's really all I've got to say about it. So, with that in mind, let's investigate the beer. Okie dokie. It's a 3.8% 500ml bottle of mild. It says our award-winning traditional dark mild full of roast malt flavour brewed with the finest malt and hops. Well, in fact, it's only got one hop variety in there, and they are Fuggles hops. Fantastic British hop used in a lot of, or fantastic English hop, I should say, used in a lot of beers such as bitters, ESBs, milds. In fact, most British beer that you can think of, British beer styles, I should say. And it's got crystal malt in here and roasted malt. Obviously, the roasted malt will give it the dark appearance that mild has. And mild, as I say, is a bit of a hit and miss sort of style, which has gone out of favour, but it's making a little inroad back into the palate of the British beer drinker. I think the reason it went out of fashion was because in the 50s and 60s, mild was really abused by landlords. If they were going to water down, if they were going to add the slops to any particular beer in a pub, it would be the mild. And I think that put a lot of drinkers off, and eventually it went out of favour. So you can thank unscrupulous landlords who are on the fiddle for doing that. But it seems to be making a bit of a comeback now, which is good because it is an underrated style. And when you do get a decent mild, they're generally really good. Now, mild by the definition, they're a low ABV session beer. So, with that in mind, let's get it open and let's see what's going on. Right. Cap is just plain black. Nothing to see there. Get it into the glass. Yeah, that's what mild looks like. That's what I'd be expecting. Now, if you want a reasonably good mild, try the Thwaites dark mild. That isn't too bad, and it's usually really cheap. It's not the best mild I've ever tasted, but it's acceptable. Got a nice nutty aroma to it as well, and flavour, I should say. What's this got going on? Aroma's a little bit subdued, but it's mostly roasted malt. I am getting that roasted malt type coffee, burnt coffee style aroma. Aromas are faint, and you usually expect that on a mild. As I say, mild it's a session beer, a dark session beer that used to be quite popular, but it's fallen out of favour basically. But obviously not with Elgood, which is good. And I like a brewer that does a decent mild. Hook Norton do a good mild as well, if you want one. Hook Norton, Thwaites. The Timothy Taylor stuff was a little bit disappointing, but don't let that put you off Timothy Taylor. They're a good brewer. And this generally smells like a decent mild. There is roasted malt on there, malty aromas, no real hop flavour or aroma. I keep getting the fucking two mixed up. And that's it really. So let's get it down the hatch and let's see what it tastes like. Bottoms up. Oh yeah. Now that is a good mild. There is a distinct licorice flavour to that, along with sweet malt, and that's where the crystal malt comes in. But there is an element of roasted malt, and it's excellent. This is a really good mild. Oh, wow, it really is. I really like what Elgood do. They really are a good brewer. And this, this is mild as it should be. Now, a lot of milds don't have that much flavour because they are session beers. This has got it in abundance. You've got roasted malt. You've got sweet crystal malt. But I'm getting licorice on that as well. Not a lot, but it's just there to be noticeable. And it mingles with the malt that's in here really nicely. Oh, it's great. That really is superb. The mouthfeel is excellent. There's very, very fine bubbles in there, but there's a lot. And it's just enough to make the mouthfeel smooth, but enough to move the flavours around. And it's really good. It looks like a great pint. And believe me, this is a great pint. And this is just at the right temperature. I have literally just received a delivery from Beers of Europe, and there's a fair few German beers in there as well. And I've just noticed I cut myself opening that box on the knife. You twat, fucking stinging and all. This was the first one, and there was German beer in the delivery as well. But this one I had to try first because of all the, I wouldn't say all the hype, but all the awards that it's won. And I can see why it's won them awards. This is absolutely fantastic. And I would go as far as to say, this is probably one of the best milds I've tried. It's perfect. And this is the perfect temperature. This is definitely cellar temperature. This is what you'd get coming out of a cask. This very slightly chilled, but enough there. I think if you have that colder, you're going to miss a lot of them flavours. This is the perfect temperature, and them flavours are there. They're not big, don't get me wrong. They're definitely there, but they're not huge. You're not bowled over by the aroma or the flavour. It's exactly what a mild should be. Flavoursome, low ABV, but not too big on the flavour, because it's a mild, and it's because it is, or was, up until landlords started pissing about with it, it was the archetypal session beer, and it was really popular. But as I say, a lot of, especially London brewers, did it as well. They poured the slops from all the other bitters and ales that had been around. They just get them out the drip trays, pour it back into the mild, and then that would be served up with the mild. And eventually, you know, you can fool people sometime, but eventually they're going to twig if you're serving up shit beer. And yeah, it was an unscrupulous practice, which sadly saw the demise of mild. But I'll tell you something, if mild tastes like this, then I think it will make a comeback. This is perfect. It really is a great session beer. And I don't think you'd see a craft brewer brewing mild. I don't think they get it. But again, it sounds like I never cease to have a bash at craft brewers. Well, it's not true. Yeah, they like doing their IPAs and stuff, but these are the beers that are getting overlooked. This is our heritage. Mild. That was so popular, especially after the war, during the sort of late 40s and early 50s. This is what people drank. And it's great if it's done properly and not filled up with slops. But I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving this. I'm going to put it down because I just want to keep drinking it and drinking it. So what's the verdict on Elgood's Black Dog? Yeah, I would go as far as to say this is the best mild I've tasted so far. Mild is a really sketchy style of beer. Some people brew it and it just lacks flavour. Now, it's not supposed to be big on flavour. That's the whole point of mild. It is a session beer. It's just to be filled up and poured down your neck. Now, some people have taken that literally and haven't really put much flavour in there at all. They've just put a little ABV, a little bit of alcohol in there, put some roasted malt in there, which is, you know, doesn't really give it any flavour. And they've just said, yeah, this is our mild. And sad to say, and this isn't a reflection on Harvey's, because they're a good brewer, Harvey's. The trouble is, it just didn't taste of anything, as did the Timothy Taylor Ram Tam or Dark Landlord or Landlord Dark, whatever it's called. There was vague flavours in there, but it wasn't enough to pique my interest. Just don't get me wrong, it was certainly a sessionable beer that was nice to drink, but just lacked flavour. This has got it all. This has got the flavour, this has got the drinkability, this has got the low ABV, and this is genuinely beer done right. And that for me is the best mild I've tasted. So for that reason, it gets a 10 out of 10. And you know what? This is the third beer I've had from Elgood's, and it's the third beer from them that's got 10 out of 10. I absolutely love what they do. I'm going to have to get myself up to Cambridgeshire and sample the local hostilleries. I'm sure that the missus will enjoy a day out. She can go and look at the universities or something. But fuck the universities. I'm going to the universities of life. That is the pub. You get your best education in pubs. Do you know, this is a good point. I'm going to deviate here for a little second. People often talk about society and how young kids don't behave themselves, and they just carry on because there's nobody there to really sort of check their behaviour. years ago, and this is probably something that a lot of people could bail me out with. Back before the days of, you know, the PlayStations and basically where there were other ways of meeting up with people, we actually had to meet them face to face. People would go to the pub, and you'd get a mixture of all sorts of people in these pubs. Now, where I lived was a bit of a rough area, and there were certainly some rough pubs. You had your Jamaican pubs up one end of Tottenham. You had your Irish pubs dotted about all over, but the Jamaicans had sort of one or two pubs. You didn't go into them. That was just for the Jamaicans. The Irish pubs, you could get in there, but it was generally, you know, they'd be playing Irish music, and it'd be basically Guinness, and Guinness would be the most popular drink, and it would be populated by working Irish blokes who just wanted a beer. Occasionally they'd have a fight. It's what Irish people do. Bit of a stereotype there. But the point I'm trying to make pretty badly is, if you got any young buck that would go in there and start acting up, he would get a fucking pasting, and it would be a lesson, which basically means you don't fuck about, because there was always someone bigger and tougher than you, and you didn't carry knives or anything on them. You had to rely on your fists. And I'm not really a fighter, to be honest, and I want to make that clear now. I'm not trying to big myself up as being a hard man. I'm not. But people used to come into pubs and they'd get a bit leery, and they get put in their place. And that was in the day when you really didn't have weapons. You may use the old glass or whatever, or chair or table or whatever, but you wouldn't really get all the knife and the knives and the stabbings that you get nowadays. And it would be like an education for people. When you're a teenager, you genuinely, you're filled up with testosterone, you think you can take on the world. You'd walk into a pub and you'd start getting a bit leery after a few beers, start getting a bit confident, and you get put in your place. And I know it happened to me when I was a teenager. I've been put in my place a few times, rightly so. I remember a landlord bashed me up once in the, where was this? This was in a pub in Enfield, and it was closing time. That was in the days when it was 3 o'clock, and we were taking our time, gassing, and the landlord snatched a bottle out of my hand, and I give him a bit of mouth, and he offered me out basically, and I accepted, and that was the biggest mistake of my life, because I got absolutely fucking kicked round that pub. And I learnt my lesson. I didn't get leery with landlords after that, because landlords generally, or back then, they could usually take care of themselves. And I'll tell you something, he fucking took care of me that day. And that was a lesson. I didn't go into pubs. I generally didn't go round random people asking for fights, because you will get put in your place. But that's what I'm saying. Pubs, they're not the places they were. They aren't the therapy centres. Well, they may be now, but they're not the educational centres that they were, if you know what I mean. But there you go. Little deviation there, but that's Black Dog, Elgood's Black Dog. Fantastic, 10 out of 10, recommended. And that's the third beer that's got 10 out of 10 from Elgood's Brewery. I'm loving what they do. I'm going to get more beers from them, so watch out for some more reviews from Elgood's. And remember, beer is working class champagne. And I'm going to finish off that mild now, because it's fucking handsome.